Time now for Snap Tackle Pod here on PrepsKC and 41 Action News. And wherever you're at, we appreciate you dialing us in for our first playoff week edition of Snap Tackle Pod this year, which is awesome. Congratulations. We got here this far.
Yes.
Dion, we talk every single week how appreciative we are of each week of games getting played. But unfortunately, we lead off with the biggest news of the season, that the powerhouse program in Kansas City, Rockhurst, has decided to forfeit its season. Not decided to, but forced to forfeit its season with a positive COVID case within the program. How did that news strike you?
Well, I knew something was up when I got a call from a friend who has a child that goes to Rockhurst, who was kind of telling me he was hearing it. And as I'm talking to him, my phone is buzzing in my ear. So it's like I can hear all the text messages I'm getting as I try and stay on top of things, but I went out to get a pumpkin with my child at 5 o'clock this evening was when all that broke. But no, it's a stunner in the sense that you knew that every week there was a possibility of a big time program, on top of the small programs. I mean, Kearney had a quarantine for 2 weeks, and there's all kinds of programs have had it. You knew there was a chance of it happening. It just becomes more magnified as you go into the postseason, because if you forfeit this week, you're done. I mean, there's not a, hey, we'll come back in a week or 2 weeks and be ready to go. And Rockhurst is a team that was playing its best football. They just got done beating Blue Springs pretty badly. They were coming off a week off where they didn't have a game because CBC, they had to change their schedule. So they actually used that week to get healthy. They were looking pretty good. Everybody was back. Then Coach Donahoe and his staff were excited about where they could be. They were getting Joplin, who was in the state championship game last year, in a 4-5 game. And if they won, they'd have a chance to get maybe Ray Peck or Lee Summit, whoever won that game. And have a chance to run deep. And then you come to find out there's a player that tests positive and things are over. And that's, somebody on Twitter is like, I bet money this will happen. I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen. Is it really? But people don't notice it. There's like 2 8-man teams, St. Joseph Christian and Putnam County in Missouri, who are both Class 1 teams, who had the same issue already this week. So it's out there. I think there's a team in Kansas, I can't remember who it is the same way. And it's going to happen. We've had it happen every week. We've had at least 3 or 4 games in our coverage area each week. Some weeks are more than that get canceled. And you hope that it's, it sucks. It sucks it's a team like Rockhurst, who had a chance to play deep, or a team like a Mill Valley, who's a defending state champion, or Miege or Ray Peck or Liberty Northern, any of these teams that are really good. Odessa, who's riding a 23-game winning streak and is defending Class 3 state champion. Any of them, it would be horrible to happen. At the same time, I try and look at it like this. I've done a couple different podcasts today outside the metro, and I said, look, we're going into week 1 of playoffs of a season that I was told by several people who were in the know, who were in district administrations or conference leadership, that said, we're just trying to get 2 weeks in before Labor Day, play 2 games on the Missouri side, because we're pretty sure there'll be a Labor Day spike and we'll get shut down, or we're going to try and get a month in. We're going to try and get it started. And here we are, we're in the first week of playoffs. And yes, we've lost a marquee school. And there's no doubt about that. I mean, the high school football royalty in the state of Missouri, as far as I'm concerned, in the big class starts with Rockhurst. There's nobody else who really comes close. So it's horrible. It's horrible for those kids. But also, I think those kids will maybe look back and say, we were lucky to get the 8 in that we got.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. And the one thing I hope is that we don't get to a state championship week and somebody on one of those teams, that something happens there. And it's going to be tough. We all know that numbers are spiking, and it's the winter and people are inside, and, things are there. And so, and at the same time, you don't want anybody to be unsafe and not take care of their things or ignore something. But the thing I hope is that at least state championship round, we've got 2 teams on the field in every class on both sides of the state line.
Well, and with each passing week, with the number of teams still playing football getting chopped in half just by competition, you would think that the likelihood of this happening decreases, and frankly, it should. But you're right; it's always going to be there, even if you get down to the final 2 in a classification. We've seen in football with the Big 12 and the SEC and a lot of these leagues. They built in extra bye weeks, anticipating something like that. Is that something that Kansas and Missouri should have done / could have done going into this season, to where you have that buffer to where, okay, a team can't play this Friday, but they can play next Friday. Let's move it up a week. or maybe you have it one buffer week right before state championship game to make sure those get played.
And I would say normally that it's not something that they would even entertain, because the thought of always every season is we got to get this one done because the next one's coming. I'm not sure about the next one coming. Some stuff that's come out today, that some recommendations, like Illinois is recommending no indoor sports and that kind of stuff. I know Johnson County Health Commission in Kansas is kind of traveling down that road as well. So they're maybe not locked into that. Now, two organizations who are notoriously not flexible have been flexible. To bump things back a week and do that is something, I don't know. I'm not going to say never, because
creating a spring season for some of these sports, right?
Yeah, I would think they would,
in comparison as far as logistics goes.
I would think if they thought they could do it, why not? I mean, you're playing at a high school anyway. You could play it at a neutral site close to, you're still in Jeff City, or you could find another spot if that. Now, I'm pretty sure that those stadiums in Jeff City are still going to be available on December 13th or December 20th or whatever the date is that you can play. And it's a legit question to say that if you get down to the state championship game, because there is nothing behind it. You're not in the semifinals with the state championship game behind it, and now you're moving all that schedule around. But if you get to that state championship round, you bounce back a week, and so you have a champion decided on the field. It's going to be a question there. I would say as of right now, no. But every time I've heard someone say, Amisha or Keisha will never do that, that's been thrown out the window this year. So, I think that's a fair point. And like you said, the Big 12 and the SEC all built in extra weeks. And as a Missouri fan, I was frustrated they didn't play Vanderbilt, 2 weeks ago. My team's actually winning, so I wanted them to keep playing. You're an Oklahoma State guy. I mean, I think you want to see more Oklahoma State football. Or are you just ready for them to call the season and crown you national champions?
I like the wins. The wins have been very, very odd and arduous so far this year for Oklahoma State. But I mean, look back to the high school side of things. There's so many scenarios out there, and look for these are just ideas we're throwing out there for Kansas and Missouri, both the high school associations. They should probably take a step back and say, hey, these are victories here. We're getting to the state playoffs, and honestly, when it's all said and done, we'll look back and it'll probably be a very small percentage of games in the playoffs that were killed because of this, just like it was in the regular season, and we'll declare it a victory because 90+% of the games will have gotten played. I want to talk about a scenario here. First of all, does Mill Valley and Shawnee Mission North get the award for the latest canceled game so far?
Yes, they do. And last week when you sent me that text, I was like, that's easily the latest cancellation, 604.
608, I think, maybe
something like that.
When we found out about it, it was 608. But players were on the field. Mill Valley had been there at the game for an hour and a half. So
I'm not sure how that all went down. I would think in terms of knowing, and I understand what Shawnee Mission North was probably trying to do, was trying to wait on a test to get that game to go as best they could, and that's to honor their commitment to Mill Valley and give them a game. But I think when you talk about if you were going to Mill Valley, if you're Shawnee Mission North and you're going to Mill Valley, I don't think that's that big of a deal. If you get it's your choice to get on the bus and go over there and go, oh, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to call it off. Yeah. But when you're hosting, you might want to make that call, say 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon before everybody loads on a bus and heads on over.
And I think we're seeing, and I think we've seen it throughout the season. I mean, your record and your potential really matters in a lot of these COVID calls. And we saw Mill Valley, a team that had played all 7 weeks prior to that of the season, realize where they're at. This is a defending state champ who could win it again. Realize, hey, we don't want to play this game. Doesn't matter if we win by 50 points.
Yeah,
they have a COVID case. We might have to quarantine for next week. For 2 weeks, because Mill Valley is going to get a bye in the playoffs, and they would be like rockers and be out of the playoffs. So my question to you is, what if we see that scenario in the postseason where you have one team with potential COVID issues, you have another team that says, well, we don't want to play that game because you have potential COVID issues. Is there a forfeit there? And if so, who gets
a forfeit? I don't know.
We'll play, but has COVID issues, or the team saying we don't want to play.
I think the second you say you have COVID issues, you're the team that has to look to forfeit. I mean, if you're honest, I think if you're honest and say we may have an issue, then it's like, well,
COVID issues are different. That's a different term depending on what school district you're in, what school you're at, which side of the state line. wherever.
Like say if it's me and you come to me and say, I may have COVID issues. My statement to you is, yes, you have issues. Those are not my issues. I'm here and ready to play. If you are not able to play, or if you're concerned about playing,
but if you have one team saying, hey, we're fine, this guy might have it, we're willing to, because that's what we've seen. You can be quarantined retroactive, right? And we've seen a lot of that to where
the one thing that
spot a couple of days later, you just play the team they played, like, well, we're going to shut down for a week.
And you're seeing, as of right now, Blue Springs is still good to go. And so that's Rutgers played last week. So, and most of the season, a lot of the teams, if they played a team that had somebody that tested positive, they sat down for a week. And that was kind of the standard operating practice. But I'm not sure how that, I mean, if you can prove that the kid didn't, we've got no transmission between teams. In fact, I think the University of Wisconsin just released a report saying that basically there really hasn't been transmission between athletes playing sports. So it's, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like when Friday night's done and we make it to the next week, it's just like, okay, we just start all over again. And today was probably the biggest COVID news of the season. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's other teams that have canceled, and it's because of who it is, and it's if you judge on Twitter and social media, it's talked about more, but nobody was talking about St. Joseph Christian on Saturday and Sunday when they were deciding to stop. And Putnam County, and I challenge you to tell me where Putnam County, Missouri is. They've forfeited to South Harrison. That's all north central Missouri.
But definitely who it is, Rockhurst has.
And they were
that's for 6 o'clock on 41 Action News.
Yeah, I mean it's a it's a top 5 team. I mean it's not playing.
A team that could have made a run. All right, so let's be done with the COVID talk. Let's talk about teams still playing or games that have gone on. I want to ask you this: is Lawrence good enough to win the 6A West in Kansas? That's right, Lawrence, where it's situated, still goes west in Kansas because of the abundance of people that live on that far right sliver of the state of Kansas. Normally, Derby is the bell cow there. They're the one that takes everybody down. They are down this year. Are the Chesty Lions better?
I think they are. In fact, Lawrence, Free State, and Gardner on the west side this year. Gardner got a little trip on the west side, which actually, if you're Gardner, that helps you.
Missouri, by the way, like 10 miles.
I know.
Maybe a little bit farther.
Yeah. So, I mean, and actually for Gardner, I think it helps them. I think Free State's in a better spot. If they'd have been on this side, I don't know if they run the gauntlet of let's talk about, they beat Lathan North by 1 point. They would probably have to beat at least one or two of Olathe North, Blue Valley, and Shawnee Mission Northwest. And oh, by the way, even though they crushed Olathe West in week 1, they're still decent. Yeah. And you may have to play them early. So, I mean, they've got a much easier run. I've talked to some guys over there. I'm not buying into Junction City at all. I don't have any faith in them. And they're ranked high, and Derby has been very average. I mean, not average, but not what they've been. I mean, they are very beatable.
They're very below average compared to what they are. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely a year to come out of the West, and it's just who's going to come out of the other side. And I feel bad, I left out Blue Valley, and so throw another team in there. Blue Valley Northwest is decent. I mean, that's a team they would have had. All those teams on the east side, there's some games that are going to trip some teams up. And, it's, Blue Valley North's not bad. I mean, the Blue Valleys are all pretty decent. West beat Blue Valley North, they only have one win, but that's a team that's not bad. They're just young. So it's, outside of the Shawnee Mission Northwest is very good. The other Shawnee Mission schools aren't very good. Olathe East isn't bad. Olathe West isn't bad. Olathe North is very good. So there's 5-6 teams that you have to go through. I think Lawrence is a team to beat. And if they can come through healthier on the west side, that's going to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's Kansas 6A. What about 5A and 4A here? Are Miege and Aquinas combined, 7 losses? Are they down, or are they just playing possum? Are they going to turn back into
they're more flawed teams than they have been. I know Aquinas is dealing with injuries. Their best receiver is out, Kammerer. And he really, and Blake Anderson, their quarterback, has been nicked up. Max Floyd, their quarterback, the one who stepped in, has been pretty good. But Kammerer really was the guy, in that flex bone. You need that one big receiver who can go beat you over the top, and you fake out of it. And he was huge. He was huge for them all season long. Got teams out of 8-man and 9-man fronts, but now that's what they're facing. Now they've played some just brutally tough teams. Omaha West Side, they beat China Mission Northwest by stopping the 2-point conversion. Then they play Omaha West Side. They play Bishop Carroll.
Lawrence.
So and Lawrence. Yeah. So I mean they've had just a run there, 4 straight games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Miege on the other hand, their losses are to Aquinas, Shawnee Mission Northwest, Rockhurst, and Bishop Carroll. I mean, so the one thing for Miege, and this is going to be the big test this year, they struggle to stop the run. Everybody they play in 4A runs the ball and runs it well.
Good point.
And then a team like Tonganoxie can run it and throw it, and so can Paola when they want to. Baser Linwood can chuck it all over the yard and score a lot of points. St. James can run it and throw it. I mean, so there's 5-6 teams in 4A.
Group of competition in 4A, you think?
Miege?
Whether Miege is up or down, is this the best group of teams around them? That are capable of winning it.
Oh yeah, they definitely are, and I think it's gonna make for a great playoff. And John Holmes knows that. He's like, hey, look, we got our work cut out for us. And when we talk to him,
he kind of likes that a little bit too, right? He's gonna hit November, and he's going to be in some games, right? And he says his starters aren't going to be out by halftime, right?
No, I was looking back at some of those years that they were
part of that. Yeah, they
were hanging 60 on everybody they played, like in 15 and 16, and it just wasn't even close. They weren't even getting challenged. And I think it was in 16 they won a 15, or I can't remember. I think it was 15. They won a state championship in an ice storm where they hung 50 points on a team in an ice storm, and they were just unbelievable. But now that's a little more back to the pack, and the pack is actually caught up with them. It's not like they've just come back down, but those teams are good, and they're going to get tested. They're a 12 team. They got to get on the road to Chanute week 1. And I mean, I think they'll beat Chanute, but still they got to get on the road and go play it. And then they'll be on the road the next week and the next week and the next week and the next week, unless someone, 11 through 16 does some kind of crazy run and they get a home game. So they're done playing home games the rest of the way. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all comes out. But I think in 4A, it's definitely going to be a run for them. Mill Valley, I think, is the best in 5A. I know that Aquinas has been banged up. DeSoto's a good team, but I think Mill Valley's proven it. Topeka Seaman's got the 1 seed. The level of competition is not the same, I think.
Yeah. So what do you think? So Blue Valley Southwest plays
Emporia. I think they win that game. I'm not going to be stunned to see Blue Valley Southwest beat Topeka West or Topeka Seaman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my kind of prediction as well. And then you would have that Blue Valley Southwest Aquinas matchup, which would probably be a closer game.
It would be a closer game this year, and Southwest is better. I mean, Southwest did the same thing last year. I think they beat Washington, and then I can't remember who they beat in the second.
It's the rough and tumble EKL, and then it's you're free at last once you hit the playoffs, as long as you ever play another EKL team.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Southwest has got a chance to make another good run there on the 4A side.
All right, over to Missouri. Is Park Hill back? Are they alive? Are they to be feared? I mean,
they're dangerous. They couldn't
1-3 on the season. Now here they're at 4-5 and getting big wins over teams like Ray-Pac.
Well, they were in every game and not finishing. They just couldn't finish games.
Their 5 losses probably like 20 points or something.
Yeah, and now they are. Now they're starting to finish. They kind of got a banged up Ray-Pac coming off a big one over Liberty, but that just shows you in the Suburban Gold there are no weeks off. You've got to show up every week. Now Park Hill gets Blue Springs. Blue Springs, funny little thing about them: lose 2, win 2, lose 2, win 2.
What do they do next?
Well, if the pattern follows, they're due to lose because they lost to Rockhurst last week. So, and this was a 24-21 game, third week of the season. And Blue Springs got the win there. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The weakness of Park Hill was their run defense, and Blue Springs can run it straight at them. If they choose to do that, they have a tendency to fall in love with throwing the ball and not find an identity. I mean, that's been their biggest problem all season long. They don't have an identity. They've been all over the board and still won 4 games. There were several moments this year I didn't think they were going to win a game. I didn't think they were put together right, and I didn't think they were playing there. I thought they had some talent. Just there was some stuff missing, but they've won some games and they've got things going in that sense. But no, that's a 4-5 game on the Missouri side that in that District 4 that has Liberty and Liberty North. The team that's probably playing the best of anybody on the Missouri side in Class 6 is Liberty North. They've been 6 in a row after losing to Liberty and Ray Peck the first 2 weeks of the season. Liberty got a good bounce back win last week over North Kansas City after they lost to Ray Peck, and they're the 1 seed. They get Blue Spring South this week. Then they'll get the winner of the Park Hill. If they win that game, they'll get the winner of Park Hill Blue Springs. But I think you're looking probably at a Liberty North Liberty, though.
Oh, that'd be great.
Park Hill's dangerous. I'm not gonna be stunned to see Park Hill in that.
Agreed. Yeah.
In that district final.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Park Hill and Blue Springs, by the way, one of your big 3 games of the week as we get to the Remax Big 3. We'll stay on the Missouri side here. And look, it's week 10 of the season in Kansas City, which is the first round of the playoffs in both Kansas and Missouri. You got to mine the fields, right, to find good games a lot of times, because all the best teams are playing all the worst teams. In this case, all the best teams, a lot of them are getting buys, right, because of COVID. And you got to look at those 8-9 matchups, 7-10s or whatever. And on the Missouri side, those middle of the bracket matchups. And you can find some good games you have here. Excelsior Springs and Kearney, a couple of those middle of the road teams.
Yeah, and that's usually a district that's loaded, and we're a year removed from having 8 teams in a district and 7 of them having winning records, like 2 years ago in that district. And Excelsior Springs was one of those teams. Kearney was one of those teams. They're also in that Smithville and Winnetonka in that district is the 1-2 seed, but Kearney and Excelsior Springs are the 4-5. And Kearney hasn't played in 2 weeks. They've been in quarantine, so I'm not sure. They were struggling to find their way. They were kind of inconsistent. Excelsior got off to a tough start, played better late, with the exception of getting blown out by Odessa, which is not. There's no shame. We're finding still no shame in that.
Right.
But no, this is 2 teams that like to run the ball, and it's going to be interesting. If Excelsior can continue their momentum, or if Kearney can take that time off, because you miss a week of practice in there too. If you're quarantined, you're not allowed to be around each other, and then you come back on a short week with practice. The reason some teams will miss 2 games is because they'll get a full week of practice in before they play the next game. Some teams will take quarantine from, say, Friday to Friday, 2-week Fridays, Friday to Friday to Friday, and play on that Saturday, but then you can only practice on that Wednesday. But if you skip 2 games, you start practicing like that Wednesday of the week, and you miss that game, and then you come back and you get a full week of practice, and that's what Kearney did. So it's going to be an interesting game, and like you said, it is tougher to find good games. And this year on the Missouri side, when they spread out the districts a little bit over the classes, or spread out the teams so it's a little more even, a lot of 1 seeds got buys. So it made it a little more, some of those districts weren't as deep as they had been, because you'd get districts that had 5-6 teams, and a 6-3 matchup or a 7-2 matchup was just brutal. I mean, you'd have a 2 seed lose and be like, what? Because they'd play a soft schedule, and they'd have some 7 seed that was at 4-5 or 5-4 and just had played brutal schedule and comes out and just waxes the 2 seed. Yeah. But I don't think you're going to see as much of that this year.
Southeast and Pembroke Hill, intriguing game, and Missouri Class 3, also one of your big 3.
Yeah, Southeast is coming off a big one over Northeast. They get a share of the IL title with Lincoln Prep. They didn't play Lincoln Prep this year, but they go 4-4 under first-year coach Julius Foster, who came over from Lincoln Prep. He was a part of that program. It's 4th coach in 4 years for Southeast, and they're trying to do something there, and they really took a big step forward. And Pembroke Hill, they had their own COVID issue. They took a couple weeks off, and they've got some injuries. I think some of their better players are hurt. Every time you see this, Lincoln Prep has proven they could beat teams outside of the IL. Now Southeast is one of those teams, and East is, they're playing Van Horn this week. There's 2 opportunities there for those teams to get those wins outside the IL, which helps that conference. Southeast or East picking off a non-IL team in the playoffs just helps those kids know, hey, we can compete with these kids, and it's going to get more out next year and get their numbers up and go from there. But no, these teams have played a lot over the last few years. They're not that far away. And one thing you could say about Sam Kanopik at Pembroke Hill, he is a believer in the intercity football, and he's always tried to put, not load his schedule with those games, but try and give chances with those teams. And they played each other in the first round 2 years ago, and they played each other twice 2 years ago. So he's very familiar with these kids, and it's a good game. I mean, I think that says a lot about Pembroke Hill that they'll play these games. But now that I'm in the playoffs, they definitely will.
All right, over on the Kansas side, we're not hitting the suburbs here. We are hitting the bedroom community.
Frontier League, man.
Big three, Remax Big Three on the Kansas side. Let's start with Shawnee Heights, which is that's Topeka, right? Take on Spring Hill in 5A in Kansas. That I believe would be the 6-11 game in 5A East.
Yeah, and Spring Hill's a team that has played. They played Paola tough. They played Piper tough. They've got some good wins in there, and they're solid. Jason Feedback does a great job. They're up in 5A. Being honest with you, man, it's almost better for Spring Hill, depending on where they're sitting in the bracket, than being stuck down in 4A with the rest of their Frontier League brethren and Baser and Bishop Miege and St. James. So no, I think Spring Hill's got a chance to get one win here. Shawnee Heights they played Lawrence, they played DeSoto twice. Their schedule's been really tough, just in terms of when they needed a game, they'd go play people. Good for them, and they're 1-7 because of it. So
exactly. By the way, winner of that goes to Mill Valley.
Yes.
After in 4A, Eudora and Piper play each other. Is this a rematch? I can't remember.
They played in the regular season, and Piper got that win. Eudora's only got 2 wins, but they're playing better. They played Paola at a 5-point, 31-26 game.
Oh yeah, so this is the one. This is Piper versus / at Eudora, right?
Yes. Piper is the home team.
Yes.
Eudora is the host team because Piper can't play home games. So,
like on your website, you have Eudora at Piper, location Eudora.
So yeah, that's the way that goes. Piper's the higher seed there, and so no, Eudora's an improving team. They're young and they're good, getting better. And Piper's they're pretty salty and they're a tough squad. So this is a game for Piper. They got to be ready to play because Eudora's getting better and getting confident. And I think it's just a fun one for those two teams in that league. And they're in that. I'd say Eudora's kind of in the lower middle class and Piper's in the middle class of the Frontier League. So it's kind of that range of game there.
Yeah. Lewisburg and St. James here. I like this matchup on the Kansas side.
Lewisburg's a solid football team. They got hammered by Paola last week, but there's a list of a lot of people who have been down that road this year. They've gone through everything where they played Piper and lost by a touchdown when they only had like 13, 14 kids. St. James has played a tough schedule, Miege, Aquinas, Rockhurst. I mean, all those games are tough. But then Blue Valley last week, they were hanging right with Blue Valley, and James White had an outstanding game, and for them, he ran back a kick and had long runs. And St. James is dangerous. Dakota Burt, their quarterback, is really good, and so they're a team to go. Now they've got some injuries coming out of last week, so we'll see how they go. But this is going to be a fun one because Lewisburg is back to kind of option football and real tight sets, and St. James is going to spread you out a little bit and do some zone reads and things like that. So it's definitely a matchup of styles, and really it's an 8-9 game in that 4A bracket, and the winner gets Paola. But if you're Paola, man, you're getting a team you just beat 2 weeks ago. If you get Lewisburg and you get a team in St. James, that's a team that's got a lot of reps under their belts against good teams.
Absolutely here. All right, those are your Remax Big Three on the Kansas and Missouri sides. Any parting shots? Any final thoughts here, Dion, as we move into the playoffs?
Well, as you look at this first week and you kind of go through things, it's fun in spots, and I hope everyone is grateful for what they have this year, and I think they are. And I think the Rocker situation definitely shines a light on that. But no, I think it's good to see some different faces and different teams. Park Hill South's had an outstanding season at 7-2. They're a dangerous team. Platte County's up in Class 5. Belton going from 0-10 to 8-1 this year, and a team that still could go deep. They lost to Green Valley last week, 22-0. But there's some teams that are stepping up there. Some just pure greatness out there in Odessa. I mean, they lost their quarterback, who was the Fontana winner last year, outstanding tight end, and several players off that team. They look like they haven't missed a beat. Now, they're not blowing people out by 40 every game, but they took a Harrisonville team that had hung 70 points each in its last 2 games and shut it down to nothing.
Wow.
Jace Reynolds, their outstanding tailback, who was top 5 in the nation running back for Harrisonville, 79 yards on 20 carries.
Wow.
I mean, they just shut him down. No touchdowns. I mean, and that's just a team that's just rolling. They've won 23 games in a row and really haven't lost a regular season game in 3 years. So that's a team that looks like they can make a run to the state championship game again. I don't know if they can beat a Lutheran North, or maybe he's coming out of St. Louis. So, and then you got some, Class 2 teams in St. Pius that's back in the mix, and they've got a tough district with Lexington and Lafayette County, and But they definitely are a team that they've got things set up to where, you could have a St. Pius in the state championship game. I was joking with somebody the other day, Lexington and St. Pius battling it out in Class 2. What is it, 1978 around here? Playing state championship games in high school stadiums, and St. Pius and Lexington are Class 2 powers. So it's long before I was ever thinking about football. And I was playing Little League football in second grade. So no, it's been a good season on the Missouri side, and then the Kansas side. The Tonganoxies and the Payolas, that 4A is really exciting. The dominance of Mill Valley. And then, Shawnee Mission Northwest with a chance to do something they haven't done since 1983. So along with Lawrence, who hasn't done it since the 90s.
Yeah, it'd be cool to basically see a Kansas City area final in
yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great to see.
Awesome. Dion, thanks so much for the time. For Dion, I'm Mick. We'll see you next time right here on Snap Tackle Pod.